What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Diving Deep with the Levs, where we help you have a thriving relationship.
Here on What's the Biz 559, we are excited to continue our success series when it comes to relationships. So if you watched our previous episode, if you haven't, go back and watch it. But we are going to be doing a part 2 on our success series, where we are providing principles and tools that have been tried, true, researched, and experienced that will allow you to have a healthy marriage.
Yes.
And I love how you put it. If you could just share a little snippet of changing the narrative of that and what that looks like.
Yeah, so in our culture, one of the things that we find is we are very materialistic, and it is countercultural to not be that. So we are in a consumer culture here in America. I'm not sure what your culture is like if you're watching this outside of the US, but here in the US, we have a tendency to always want the best. We have a tendency to always replace if it's not the best. And so we just want to change the narrative that it's not a matter of our relationship being defective. It's a matter of working to make our relationship what we desire it to be. And so we are providing just some principles. These aren't all the principles. These are principles that we found to be helpful, found to be consistent in research that we feel would bless your marriage. And so starting off, last week we gave 5.
Yeah.
This week we're going to give 6 through 10. And so the first one is being able to manage conflict. You must be able to manage conflict if you want a successful marriage. And so because your partner is not you, both of you have your own unique differences. Both of you bring your own set of opinions, ideas, and both of you are influenced by a different set of friends, family, and whatever makes you who you are, you bring that into it, whether it's the good parts about you, the bad parts about you, and you have to learn how to bring those two parts or those two people and mesh the relationship. And there's going to be conflict because there's going to be things about you that your partner doesn't like, and there's going to be things about your partner that you don't like. And so you have to learn how to manage the differences. And so one of the things that we found in research done by Dr. John Gottman, who's an expert on marriages, is that most of the problems that we have in marriage are unsolvable. I know when you hear that, you're thinking like, false.
I did. If I'm being honest.
But I want to tell you facts.
Yeah.
And so, honey, I'll just kind of let you go into it because you said that you didn't agree with that. So I just want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we were going over just like what we were going to be discussing, and he was saying that, and I was like, no, it all can be solved. Like, you know, there are not things that are just absolutely, we can't solve this problem. But to his point, when we started talking, it was like, okay, there's compromise that typically tends to happen the most. And if you're compromising, then it's not necessarily solving the problem. It's you both finding a middle ground in that. But I wanted to add, in managing conflict, it's not a matter of avoiding it or eliminating it. You're going to experience it, and it's an opportunity for growth and understanding of one another. But the goal here is, especially when it comes to those unsolvable conflicts, which is more so unsolvable, is more so like the differences you have, like the personality of who you are. Those are more so unsolvable. So in that, then it's a matter of just managing the conflict.
Right. And so when she talk about unsolvable problems, those are basically perpetual problems. And those problems deal with, as my wife mentioned, like personality traits. So it's who you are at the core that might get identified by your partner as something that rubs them the wrong way. For example, let's just share about our marriage.
I didn't know we were doing that.
Yeah, that's what this is all about.
Exactly.
So one of the things that, and honey, you can speak to this or you can speak to something that bothers you about me.
Okay. You're perfect, honey. I don't have anything.
Cap. So one of the things that my wife does that rubs me the wrong way is my wife will leave her clothes wherever she's changing,
Yeah.
whether that's
Wherever they land.
in the bathroom, on my side of the bedroom, or in the closet. And
I come back to them eventually.
she does, but it irks me. Now, this is more of a personality thing because when my wife is going in a certain direction, my wife is going to get it done. My wife is a doer. My wife doesn't like to waste time. So she's going to do whatever it is fast. She's going to transition fast. And for me, I like to make sure like something, like I'm going to leave it how I found it. So if my office is clean, when I leave, I want my office to be clean. Like I don't just want to leave and leave my books everywhere. So when my wife leaves her clothes, it irks me. And so this isn't something that you can solve. This is something that you have to manage because it's who my wife is. It's who I am at the core of who we are. And so this is this idea of most of your problems being unsolvable because they deal with personality traits. Now, solvable problems, those are the ones that are situational. Those are the ones that like, okay, like let's figure out how we're going to do the dishes, or we're at the gas station. How are we going to, everybody has to use the bathroom and we have kids in the car. Like, how are we going to solve this problem? Like those are solvable situations. And so that's what we want you to understand about managing conflict, because you're going to have majority of your conflicts dealing with personality traits, especially as you get into like your later years of marriage, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years and on, you're starting to see more about this person that's going to trigger certain parts of you. So how do you manage those reactions and how do you manage those situations? How you talk about it, how is your tone being used? Like what is your body language conveying? All of that makes a huge impact when you talk about managing conflicts.
And one thing I want to add is a lot of times we look at our differences and feel like, okay, we're not compatible, right? After the honeymoon phase has worn off, which I'm not saying that it doesn't come back, but in the beginning, you love everything that they do. And then you get into this, reality.
Still love everything you do.
Thank you. You just already told on yourself. But we get into this reality stage of who it is that we married and who we're with. And then it's like, oh, I don't like that. Okay, maybe we're not as compatible as I thought. Differences doesn't mean that you're incompatible for one another. If you can learn to understand, and this is managing that conflict, understanding those differences and learning how to complement each other in that, then I feel like it's a way that can be solved, but a lot of times I hear like, well, maybe we're not as compatible as I thought because you do this and I don't do this and we don't like to do the same things. You don't want to be married to you. Like you want to be married to someone different that brings a different balance dynamic to the marriage. So I just wanted to share that differences is not necessarily a bad thing. It could actually be really, really good. Like my husband said with my with my clothes, he solved the problem by getting me a hamper to go in the bathroom.
Situational, solvable problem.
Yes.
We still working on it.
We are. I'm doing better.
You are, honey. You are.
The second one is being intentional.
Second principle.
Yeah, being intentional. And this is broad, but I feel like we said this in the last episode. Marriage works. You just have to work at it. And this takes effort and it takes being intentional. That's going to be with the time you spend, the quality time, date nights. That's going to be in being intentional with communicating, with finding ways to stay connected in the little things, doing the everyday things, the everyday paddling. If you didn't watch the last episode, go back and watch it. It's all of that contributes to being intentional. And I'm going to say even being intentional when it comes to intimacy with one another and saying, yes, that too, honey. Not everything's about sex, but yes, intimacy emotionally too, honey.
And sex.
And sex. Okay. And we've shared this before, but even in being intentional on that, we're intentional with a lot of other things. But if you got to schedule it so that you have sex on this day, it's Taco Tuesday. That's our thing. No, it don't happen just on Tuesdays. But if you have to be intentional about it, it's what's important to you, you make time for. So be intentional with, those are just a few other areas. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, but I do want to just point out, like, in intentional, like that root word means to to have intention or to make intent. And that means that you give effort or you give attention to the decision that you're making. It's not something that just comes by on the fly. Like, it's something that you are effectively and giving energy to do. Like, when you like schedule sex, a lot of people look at that as a bad thing. But when you are busy, like, you have to do that, or it's like, okay, we want to be spontaneous. And it just happens when it happens. Okay, that's fine. But if your sex life is declining and sex is a big part of your connection to your spouse, then when you're frustrated, you only can blame you because you're not scheduling it. And both of you one of the reasons why you need to schedule it is because one of you might not desire sex as much as the other one. One of you might have a higher sex drive, and that's okay. But when you're intentional, you find a way or schedule that works for both of you. And I mean, sex is obviously one avenue, but like being intentional with your communication, like when do you and your spouse intentionally communicate? Like, do you have house meetings? Like my wife and I, we recently started having house meetings because there's things that we need to talk about. We need to talk about the kids. We need to intentionally talk about our finances. We need to intentionally talk about our marriage. We need to talk about our calendars and how do we mesh those together. And we also intentionally talk about like, how are we doing spiritually? Because that's a big part of our relationship. Like, what can we do to include Christ into our relationship to where that's something that we do together and not just separately? So really being intentional with planning whatever aspects of your life are important to make sure that you're doing those and you're including your partner, because you can be intentional about your schedule, but the intention we're talking about includes your partner. Yeah. And so there has to be this level of agreement on whatever we're choosing to do. And so be intentional with your marriage. Don't just let growth in your marriage happen by happenstance. Like, be intentional with how you're going to grow. Like, does your communication suck? You need to intentionally work on your communication. Do you feel you can get better as a parent? Then where can you find resources that will help you be a better parent? Because both of you have different parenting styles, and how do you mesh that together to work for the both of you? So please be intentional with your marriage.
Yeah. Actually, watching this episode, that's a way to be intentional in your marriage, because you're gaining
Shameless
knowledge.
Plug.
You're gaining knowledge and tools that is going to help invest into your marriage and the health of it. So just wanted to shout you out for that. I applaud you for that, just for listening. The next one is going to be respect. Respect your spouse.
Big one.
It's a big one for men too, but it goes both ways for sure. But for sure, respect. And that is going to be treating your spouse with respect, whether they're right or wrong, with dignity. I feel like respect is honoring your spouse in a way that's whether they're in front of you or even when they're not in front of you, how you talk about them to other people, how you treat them behind their back, how you treat them to their face. I feel like all that ties into respect.
It does. And I was going to ask you to just kind of name some stuff of what it looks like to respect your spouse when they're not there. And you kind of touched on that. But when you show respect for your spouse, what you're saying is, I value the worth that you hold as a person. Like, I see you as a person. I understand you as a person. If I don't understand you, like, I want to be curious to understand you. I'm not going to assume just because we've been together for 5 years that I know you, because I do understand that as people, the one thing that's constant is change. And I understand that at some point you'll change. And I understand that you are the one person that can give me insight into who you are. Like, yeah, like I understand like your patterns, but as a person, like, I want to respect you by understanding that you're a person of value and that you're worthy of being respected. And so one of the things of when it comes to respect is that you receive respect differently. Yeah. Like, how you receive respect is different from how your partner might receive respect. And so I'll speak to me, honey, but you can speak to you. For me, like respect for me is giving me a safe space to feel what I feel, to give me space when I need it, like when it comes to conflict, and just allowing me the opportunity to revisit conversations when I feel that I've given it thought. Because it would be, to me, disrespectful to force me to have a conversation when I need to process it a little bit more. And that has worked for our marriage. That might not work for yours.
Yeah.
That's what worked for us. So like respect will look different for different partners.
Yeah, and I think respect for me is how you treat me. It's how you speak to me. It's the tone that you use when you speak to me. It's how we address conflict. If there is something that needs to be addressed, it's honoring me. It's respecting me. It's what you do, like I said, behind my back and also in front of me. But respect for me is, I believe for me, it's being seen, like understanding me, respecting me, and honoring me. Yeah. I think that's what respect, how I receive and feel respected. It's when you really see me. And I love the word you use is curious, like to stay curious and understanding and not feel like you know it all when it comes to me. I love that. But yeah, I think that's how I receive respect. It's really in how you treat me.
And it really ain't got to be that deep either. Like
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with one guy a few years ago, and he mentioned to him that he feels the most respected by his spouse when she allows him to come in, take his shoes off, and change his clothes before he goes into dad mode. To him, like that meant everything in the world, because like I need to get off everything that I went through today so I can transition into being a dad. If you give me that time, I can show up as a better me.
Yeah,
when
that's
you
good.
show your spouse respect, it allows them the space to show up as the better them. And so keep that in mind when you interact with your spouse and you try to understand ways they feel respected. If you don't know like how they feel respected, ask. Like is that simple. If you feel like you're constantly missing the mark and you're constantly arguing, ask, honey, what would make you feel respected in this moment? And the hardest part about that is you have to be willing to do it. Like it's one thing to hear it and know their response, and it's another thing to set your pride aside, to set your ego in a lower space, to say, okay, honey, I hear you. I'm sorry for missing the mark, and I will do that because I know that's what makes you feel respected.
And our next point is going to be repair attempts. And I think this partners well with the first one, which was managing conflict, but the repair attempts. Can you share the example of a repair attempt that I do in our marriage?
Yeah, I can. So before we get into that, I just want to help you understand the difference between managing conflict and a repair attempt. Repair attempt is an action step within managing conflict. So a repair attempt is any attempt to change the negativity in an interaction before it gets out of control, before you get to that point of losing a lose-lose argument.
Yeah.
So a repair attempt can be whether you're trying to be silly or whatever the case may be. So with my wife, she knows when something's off with me because she know I'll get quiet and like I'll give her just like those like head nod responses, or I might not respond at all if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But what my wife will do is she'll just check in and say, honey, are you okay? Or she'll come in and try to soften the mood by just giving some type of joke. And I'm not gonna lie, at least half of the time I miss it. I really do. I miss the repair attempt because she knows that when I'm feeling like that, like it can be a whole day, like of just trying to process and understand and like figure out how I can better like be me in the situation. Like she knows me, so she tries to catch it. Like, and sometimes she doesn't understand that she's doing it, but she tries to catch it by trying to change the negativity, by trying to soften the blow, by either being silly or doing something that is basically trying to snap me out of that mood of like, you know, feeling down or whatever the case may be. So a repair attempt is any time that you notice the negative pattern of your relationship and you're trying to change the outcome of it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And your marital friendship is going to determine the success in these repair attempts. And obviously, in having that foundational friendship, which we previously talked about, you become an expert in seeing and knowing those repair attempts. Like some of the times he misses it, and that's just because he's caught up in his head, but he definitely notices the attempt to repair the situation. And I think I just try to make like light of it, you know, like let's say we've had a really hard conversation that we had, and you know, I can tell that he's bothered. Or other times I'll just simply ask him like, okay, what do you need from me in this moment? Like, how can I help you? Instead of assuming, because that was something that I would do is when I would notice that his mood was off, then I would be like, what's wrong? And he'd be like, nothing's wrong, you know? So instead I took a different approach after he explained to me, like, this is, in those moments, this is what you can do. And just simply asking like, you know, I feel like something's off. What can I do to help you? What do you need from me in this moment? And even that is an attempt to repair whatever it may be that's going on.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what my wife said, like your level of friendship determines your success level in your repair attempts. Yeah. If you and your spouse love each other but you don't like each other, you're most likely going to miss a lot of repair attempts.
Yes.
And research shows by Dr. John Gottman that if most of your repair attempts are noticed, successful couples have a longevity in their relationship. Couples who fail to notice repair attempts, they are most likely to go towards divorce. And so when you look at the basic level of managing conflict, it's no wonder that this is probably the single most significant predictor in whether you're going to succeed or fail as a married couple. So this isn't meant to scare anybody who feels like they aren't doing a good job of noticing when their partner is trying to do something or say something that's changing the negativity in their relationship. But what it is an opportunity for you to evaluate where you are as a couple and see ways you can improve that will enhance the marital quality of your relationship, because no one gets married to divorce.
Right.
There becomes a certain point in time where you feel like managing conflict is too much, and it's a better decision to divorce because we can't manage what we're into. Consumer mindset. And so managing conflict needs to be on the focus needs to be on like the many like everyday interactions of repair attempts if you want your relationship to get better. Now, a lot of couples feel like, man, I just don't know how we got to here. Like we used to be like so happy and we used to laugh. We used to get out in the rain and dance, and now we're just doing it for the kids. Mm. It's because you didn't notice the small, minute moments that your partner was bidding for your attention, or your partner was trying to change the conversation. But because you just had to get your point across, because you just had to say what was on your chest, you missed the moment.
Yeah.
You missed the moment, and now you're in a place to where it feels like it's impossible to come back from. But the same way that you got to where you are, you can start changing that dynamic if both of you are willing. And it might mean that you need to get some help. Go to a couple who you feel are successful. Go to a counselor. Do something to change the pattern that you're caught in, to change the outcome that you want for your marriage.
That's good, honey. Really, really good. And our last point is take ownership. Take ownership of your behaviors. Take ownership of your contributions. Take ownership of your part. Obviously, we know that there's a oneness that happens when you come together in marriage, but it's still two individuals, and we still have to take ownership. That's when we're right. That's when we're wrong. We have to take ownership of ourselves.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you pointed out, like, it's not that we're just taking ownership when we're right or just taking ownership when we're wrong, because oftentimes we avoid taking ownership when we're wrong.
Yeah.
And then there's some times where we avoid taking ownership when we're right. And that also strips away at our self-worth because inherently, like, we have to build ourselves up as people because we want to have a high self-esteem so we can show up as a positive self. We don't always want to focus on the negative. But when we focus on the negative, like, now we're taking on these qualities or these inherent ideas that it's not just that I'm doing something bad constantly and over and over and over. Now it's, I am bad. I am a bad person. I can never get it right. Like, why am I even married? So these thoughts are all connected. And so what we mean by take ownership is take ownership for your part in the problem or the solution. And when you are taking ownership, this is just me. And this is a mindset that I developed, that I've been developing by the people that I've been listening to probably within the last 6 months, is taking ownership in a situation that might not even be my responsibility. For example, like, if my wife said something to me that rubbed me the wrong way, it's easy to say, like, you approached me wrong. But in that situation, like, I can also shift the focus to myself to say, like, okay, how could I have responded differently so that when she did come to me that way, like, I'm still secure in who I am and my insecurity didn't respond to her and cause the situation to be worse. So even taking ownership in that sense, because you can't change what your partner does. Like, you can't change who they are. You can't make them more intimate. You can't make them more loving. You can't make them respect you more. You can't make them take out the trash. Like, you can't make them wash the cat or the dog. Like, you can't make them do anything. But what you can do is change the pattern by changing who you are, by changing one simple step that will cause the pattern that you're in to change just a little bit so you can go and get a different outcome.
That concludes all of our principles and tips and tools for this episode. And we hope that they've been helpful. Maybe you're in a place where you don't need the tools right now, but this is a preventative measure, right? As well as if you need the tools, the screwdriver, the hammer, whatever it is right now, please utilize these tools. But if you don't, make sure you have them in the tool bag. So when something arises, when conflict arises, that you have something to pull from as a resource. And so we hope that this has been helpful. Success leaves clues, and we wanted to give you some tools that we found healthy couples and successful couples have made it by utilizing these principles. Please like, subscribe to What's the Biz 559 so you never miss an episode. We are very thankful to have you here with us. Thanks for watching. Do you have any final thoughts, honey?
I don't, but I just want to let you know that a thriving marriage is for you.
It's for you. Make it happen.
We'll see y'all next episode.
Peace.